Yeah, you were like the ad team where you're just like optimizing,
So we're live here for Sammy's Law Bill. Open door for all, Transalt, open plans, Writers Alliance, Famous State Streets. Your elected officials here, Brad Hoyman Siegel. You have Shahana Hanif. You have Zoran Madami. You have Joanne Simon. And you have Shahana Hanif. I think I said Shahana Hanif before. So you have, what's his name? Brad Hoyman Siegel here. Shahana Hanif. You know, there's a few of them here. So there's a lot of people in the back. So we're going to go live now. You know.
So they haven't done it.
Mm-hmm.
I got it past my house.
Nosotros somos los reporteros reales. Ay, se me ay, mierda. We have here the Honorable Ian Walton. He's one of the leaders of the transgender community. He's one of the leaders. Nice one, I think. You are a young man. Don't forget to respect the elders. Don't be an asshole. Respect elders.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. This is the way to go, everybody.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for being here. I want to start off with a short chant. Safe streets, save lives. Safe streets,
Save lives!
safe streets,
Save lives!
safe streets,
Save lives!
safe streets.
Save lives!
Woo! So we are here today. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Adams, Transportation Alternatives. We are here today to fight for safe streets, to fight for Sammy's Law, which we need to get through the state assembly and the state legislature in just a few days left of session. To save lives across the 5 boroughs, New York City must have the ability to set its own speed limits.
Yes.
We kills more New Yorkers than drunk drivers, distracted drivers combined. And pedestrians and cyclists, especially in high poverty neighborhoods, are especially vulnerable. We need to be investing in infrastructure and safe streets legislation that support our community's well-being. All New Yorkers deserve safe streets, no matter what zip code you live in. Right now, we have been pushing for almost 3 years in Albany to gain control over the right to set our speed limits on our streets.
Come here.
Other cities like Seattle that have lowered speed limits to 20 miles per hour have seen a clear reduction in crashes. Every day that we wait, every day that we delay this life-saving legislation, we lose another one of our neighbors. Just last night, many of the people here today gathered in Brooklyn in honor of Adam Uster, a transportation alternative member who lost his life hit by a truck in Brooklyn. We can prevent this. We have the tools to stop this. And it starts with Sammy's Law, with giving New York City control over our speed limits.
Do it.
And so I want to start us off today introducing the person and the family that this legislation is named after. Amy Cohen, co-founder of Families for Safe Streets, mother of Sammy, and who has been a tireless fighter in getting us here today and fighting for safe streets legislation.
Just over 9 years ago, I stood almost in this exact spot before we announced the creation of Families for Safe Streets. And then we went into the City Council for a hearing on Vision Zero and making our streets safer. And I met Belkis Rivera for the first time, who lost her son as well, and started to realize we were a large group, a horrible club, who had buried their children, siblings, spouses, friends, family members, or suffered serious injuries. And we put our pain to purpose and said, this cannot continue. We have the tools to put in place to save lives. We just need our elected officials to have the courage to demand them to implement them. I never thought it would take nearly 10 years to make these simple changes on our roads. Our first fight was to demand that New York City be able to lower its speed limit to 20 miles per hour. And we were told, no, to do it, we're going to have to compromise for 25. Well, we're back now to fix that compromise, and it should not take this long to do so. The bill was introduced on what would have been Sammy's 20th birthday. He died when he was almost 13 years old. We are now approaching his 23rd birthday. We cannot wait another session to pass this no-nonsense, common-sense bill. We need the City Council to pass a home rule message, and we need the Assembly and Senate to act before the legislative session ends next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Safe streets.
Save lives!
Safe streets.
Save lives!
Safe streets.
Save lives!
Safe streets.
Save lives!
So next we're going to hear from the sponsor of this legislation.
Yo, D, you gotta chill, man. Chill. You can't do that here. You gotta chill, please. You can't. Do not. Just chill, all right? Please, just chill, bro.
Thank you very much. State Senator Brad Hoylman and Siegel, proud to represent the west side of Manhattan, 6 miles from Christopher Street to West 103rd, and also very proud to be the Senate sponsor as well as the senator for the grandmother of Sammy Cohen, Joan Dean. And I'll never forget when I called Amy with the idea of naming this legislation after Sammy, in part to memorialize Sammy's memory, but also to help champion safer streets and acknowledge the work that Amy and so many other families have accomplished in making our streets safer. So a round of applause for Families for Safe Streets, turning pain into principle every step of the way. And who would have thought, Amy, that when I called on that day, we would introduce the bill on Sammy's birthday. And I now have a 12-year-old, and I understand just how precarious, how dangerous, how disconcerting it is to be a pedestrian in New York City, to be a cyclist, to be a parent pushing a stroller. It is unacceptable that Albany is in charge of New York City speed limits.
Right. Unacceptable.
Why should a senator in Binghamton or Buffalo have anything to say about the speed limits in Brooklyn? It makes no sense.
Right.
So I plead to the New York City Council, and I thank my council colleagues who are here and my assembly colleagues and senators. I plead to the City Council. We need that home rule message. Help us unshackle New York City from Albany's control. Help us help you make our streets safer. Let's get a home rule message. Let's pass Sammy's law. Let's do it for the memory of Sammy and every other family who's lost a loved one, whether it be a child, a parent, an aunt, or an uncle. We can make our streets safer. The data shows lower the speed limit, save lives. Let's lower the speed limit in New York City. Let's save lives. Thank you very much.
What do we want?
Safe streets.
What do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Safe streets.
When do we want it?
Now.
We're here because of the families. Families who have lived through traumatizing, heartbreaking crises on our streets, and who know what is needed to save lives, who know what is needed for New York. So I want to ask all the family members who are here today to hold up your photo of your loved one in their memory and their honor. And next we want to hear from Belkis Rivera, who has been doing this work for years, who's been a champion and a fighter for her family. And Anna will also be joining for translation support.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Belkis Rivera. Este es mi hijo Josber Rivera, de 23 años de edad, graduado de la universidad en el 2010 y un año después sufrimos trágica muerte. Mi hijo salió en la Navidad del 2011 por 2 horas y jamás regresó a casa. Mi hijo Josber Rivera fue atropellado por un vehículo que iba a gran velocidad en Muscle Tower en el Bronx, muriendo en el lugar del accidente. El señor Mitchell Williams venía conduciendo a gran velocidad después de salir de una fiesta navideña por el mismo sector. Mitchell Williams abandonó el lugar del accidente sin prestar ninguna ayuda a mi hijo. Minutos después, regresó a un lugar muy cercano donde a pocas cuadras del accidente quemó su carro. El señor Williams recibió una condena de 2 años y 8 meses por haber abandonado el lugar del accidente. Hoy estoy aquí para apoyar la ley SAMI. Esta ley debe ser aprobada, no va a permitir a la ciudad de Nueva York tener el poder y la autonomía sobre los límites de muerte en nuestras comunidades para evitar sufrimiento y dolor a nuestras familias. El dolor de perder a un ser amado y aún más a un hijo, simplemente no hay palabras para describir esa pérdida. Gracias a Familia Segura de la calle Nueva York y a la transportación alternativa por invitarme una vez más a unirme a todos ustedes en una sola voz, la ley SAM. Gracias a Ana por comunicarse conmigo para yo formar parte de esta voz. Amy y a todos los parientes que han perdido hijos, padres, madres, esposos, que han perdido en la ciudad de Nueva York por vía de un accidente a sus hijos o a cualquier pariente, reciban de mí un gran abrazo y mi dolor es su dolor. Gracias.
Good morning, my name is Lucas Rivera. This is my son, Luis Rivera. He was 23 years old. He graduated from college in 2010. A year later, he suffered his tragic death. My son left on Christmas back in 2011 for 2 hours and he never came back home. My son, Giselle Rivera, was hit by a speedy driver in the Bronx. My son was killed at that moment. Mr. Williams was driving very fast after leaving a Christmas party in the same area. Mr. Williams left the place and did not help my son. He was left bleeding. The driver tried to disappear his car and hide the evidence, blocks away from the crash. Mr. Williams was sentenced 2 years and 8 months of jail time just because he left the place of the crash, not because he killed my son. Today I'm here supporting Sammy's law. This law will allow New York City to have the power and autonomy over our speed limits. Our authorities should support this law to avoid more deaths in our communities and families suffering. The pain of losing a family member and a son don't have any explanation, and we can simply describe this loss. Thank you to Families for Safe Streets and Transportation Alternatives for the invitation. And I'm very happy that I'm here today. Thank you, Amy, and thank you all the parents who have lost due to traffic violence their children. Thank you.
So to get this done in the final days of our legislative session, it's going to take all of us. And we're proud to have today our champions in the Assembly, the Senate, and at the City Council. So I want to invite us, Assembly Member Zoran Mundan. And then,
So, I'm Joanne Simon. I represent the 52nd Assembly District in Brooklyn. Literally, my district ends a block from where Sammy is. And so this is a very personal, very local issue for us, but we know it is not just a local issue. It is a plague that affects families throughout our city and even our state. And so what we need to do is make sure that New York City can set the speed limits that it believes it needs to keep its people safe. And we are all those people. We are all crossing streets. We are all bicycling down streets. We need to be safe. And we need to be able to rely on the leadership and the expertise of our city DOT, who is very, very familiar with our streets. Not somebody in Albany, not somebody somewhere else in New York State, but to give the right to New York City to set the speed limits for New York City. That's really all we ask. It's I think it's a very reasonable, and in fact should be a very small ask, but it's a very big deal because of the way the law is structured. And so we are fighting very hard in Albany to make this happen. We do need a home rule message from the city. We can't even put it on a calendar for approval until and unless we get that from the city. So we're working hard with both the city and the state to make sure that this happens, and to make sure it happens that we don't let another session go by without having passed everything. Thank you.
Safe streets!
Save lives!
Safe streets!
Save lives!
Safe streets!
Save lives! My name is Zohran Mamdani. I'm the assembly member from the 36th District in Northwest Queens, parts of Astoria and Long Island City. And alongside colleagues like Assemblywoman Joanne Simon, Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal, and so many others in the Assembly, we stand in full-throated support of passing Sammy's Law and doing so before the end of session on June 9th.
Thank you.
We call for this because we know that there are no such thing as accidents. We know that if we focus on the individual actions of drivers, we lose sight of the truth, which is that these are policy decisions. Policy decisions that are being taken in City Hall and up in Albany. And what we need to do is entirely reshape the way that our city and our state relates to our streetscape. We need to have speed limits that are in line with safety standards. We need to have bike lanes that are in line with actual protections. We need to ensure that when you get into a car, you do not have the choice of whether or not to run over somebody. There are physical impediments, policy impediments, things that ensure that you do not even imagine that as a potential thing to do. So we stand here, and I stand alongside colleagues who have been fighting this fight for far longer than I have even considered the plight of this issue. Because we know that the longer we take, the more people will die. This fight began with Sammy, but just a few months ago, our district lost Dolma, a 7-year-old girl crossing the street who was killed by a driver. And so often in that moment, the anger that erupts is against that individual driver, and I understand it. But we know there are too many names of the children that we have lost to think that this is an individual problem. We have to pass this in Albany. I'm so happy to see Council Member Shahana Hanif, Chris Marte, and so many others that we know support us in fighting for this home rule message. And once that is done, we are going to take it over the finish line. Because when we talk to our colleagues in the Assembly, when Brad Hoylman-Siegel talks to his colleagues in the Senate, we know that people understand we cannot have another year where the families who have lost their children have to come up to Albany and live through their worst traumas, their worst memories, all in the hopes that we could see their children one more time in passing this legislation. We will do everything we can to ensure this is the final year that we have to fight this battle and we can bring safety to our streets of New York City. Thank you very much.
Save lives!
Save lives!
Save lives!
We're joined also by Patricia Moran, another Families for Safe Streets member from Jamaica, Queens. I was going to say a few words about her son.
Hi, good morning. Hi, my name is Patricia Moran-Fuller, and my son, Andre, is my only child. He was killed on August 14, 2021, coming from work. I lost my beautiful son, Andre, in a crash in Brooklyn, just 2 blocks from his job, and 2 blocks from the Long Island Railroad where he was to go take the train home. He never came home. Andre was a special, hard-working, caring person, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be getting ready to celebrate his 31st birthday on this month. May 22 is his birthday. He would have been 31. My life changed forever on that day, as I have to live as the lives of countless other New Yorkers who are mourning the loss of their loved ones or recovering from major injuries due to crash on our street. This year alone, we have lost 76 New Yorkers in traffic violence, 76 neighbors, friends, family members. Each of those people was a vital member of our community, and they are not with us because we refuse to do everything we could to protect them from unsafe streets. We must stop this epidemic now. My family and families like mine are asking the City Council to support a home rule message Assembly to pass Sammy's law this year. New York as a city can New York City deserves to be able to control its own speed limits so that we can do everything possible to prevent crashes that result in senseless injuries and loss. Nothing will bring Andre back. And to me, and to allow us to celebrate his birthday this month. But we will have the power to take action to prevent more crashes like the one that took his life far too soon. Thank you. My name is Richard.
This is an epidemic. Far too many families, far too many New Yorkers have lost loved ones. We cannot have an individual response. We have to be looking at using every tool possible. And why would we not want to? This is entirely preventable. Next, we are joined by our council members who are fighting to get a council home rule message to make sure that New York City is doing everything we can to have control over safe streets on our safe speeds on our streets. Councilmember Shahana Hanif.
Thank you. Safe streets.
Save lives.
Safe streets.
Save lives.
Safe streets.
Save lives.
Good morning. I'm Councilmember Shahana Hanif. I represent the 39th District in Brooklyn, where Sammy lives. And over the course of my term, last year was one of the deadliest years for traffic violence. 16 children were killed. 16 children were killed. It is unacceptable, unconscionable that we as a city cannot decide what our speed limits should be. Over the last several weeks, I've joined families and advocates on group bike rides across 4th Avenue, one of the deadliest intersections that needs immediate protections for cyclists and pedestrians. We've been calling attention to the 9th Street corridor, where we lost Sarah Schick, who was cycling through the 9th Street corridor. I joined my colleagues and neighbors on Atlantic Avenue for a walkthrough. Our streets need to be safe. Plain and simple. It shouldn't take a decade. It shouldn't take a decade. Our families should not need to keep memorializing their children and family members to remind our levels of government that we need to save lives. It shouldn't be this hard. So I joined my colleagues in the state. And we are going to continue to be proactive in saying that Sammy's Law must pass, that New York City should be able to set speed limits. We need lower speeds because this is a racial justice issue. It is a women's rights issue. It is an economic justice issue. No one walking to school, walking to work, or just simply walking should be murdered. So I'm here joining all of us to say we need to get this done. It is embarrassing. Every day that passes is embarrassing. And a reminder that our city continues to fail cyclists.
Come on. D, come on. Go. Come on, let's go. Come on. It's another rally. Come on. Welcome. Come on. It's another rally around the area. Come on. Come on. What's up? What's up, man? What's up? What's up? Just came from Transalt. Told everybody to come over here. Fuck them. You know what I mean?
You waved to everybody when you walked past yesterday. You didn't wave.
Yeah. What's up, man? What's up, bro? What up, man?
You walked past yesterday.
Hey, what's up, Mike? What's up? Everything good?
You walked past
Yeah.
that gate yesterday.
Yeah, I forgot.
Everyone was
I
like,
mean-
Chris. And I'm like, hey, Chris.
Yeah, I didn't see you. Yeah, I didn't see you, man. Hey, what's up?
I felt like such a loser.
Hey, yeah, sorry about that, man.
I was like, hey.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Bob? What's up? You doing good, man? Yeah.
How far did you run?
I ran like from Central Park, like a few miles. Yeah. Like a half a mile.
Wow.
It's like a Transalt rally. I told everybody to come over here because it's better because everybody gets adjust your pricing. So, but thanks for doing this, you know. This is good.
You saw what happened at my rally.
Yeah, there's one tomorrow with these guys, and I'm like, I'm not gonna cover that shit. I'm not covering those guys. They can go themselves. You know what I'm saying? Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Could you do it one more time?
Let me go right here.
All right, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Common Sense Caucus of the New York City Council's press conference regarding the implementation imminently of congestion pricing in New York City. As we know from the start of the congestion pricing process, the goals were threefold. It was to reduce emissions, it was to reduce congestion, and it was to raise funds for the MTA. Today, we can definitively declare that all three of those goals are not met by congestion pricing. Okay, we have seen our own environmental impact statement, funded and done by the MTA itself, inform us that congestion will not be reduced by any meaningful level and instead will be just shifted to the outer boroughs. We've also seen that emissions will not be reduced by any meaningful level and instead be shifted to the outer boroughs. And today, we can talk about the financing because we have heard from the beginning that the MTA needs $1 billion in new revenue to support itself in the foreseeable future. Today, now we have a state budget deal and a state casino deal that basically guarantees not only will we get $1 billion in funding for the MTA, we'll get $2 billion per year. So with that case presented, why do we still need to implement congestion pricing? I believe it's because congestion pricing is more about politics of punishment than about meeting any of its initial goals. Okay, if you look at the chart next to me, David, $11 billion one-time cash infusing in the MTA this year. And then $2.2 billion in recurring funds for the agency. Maybe we should start asking the agency why it costs between 8 to 12 times more to build a mile of underground track than other global cities. Why does it cost $30 million to build one single staircase? Why did the MTA spend more money on consultants on the 2nd Avenue subway than on the actual work on the 2nd Avenue subway? The MTA is run by Mr. Magoo and his incompetent bunch of morons. There are over 100 people there who make over $260,000. Normally, in America, we reward success and competence. In the MTA, we reward disaster and failure. The MTA needs not just a rebranding, but a complete overhaul. Now, if you don't believe me, let's look at the experience in London. Because, as we know, London has long been the model of congestion pricing. London remains the world's most congested city, the report says. That's the BBC, that's not fake news. There are more cars today driving in London than there were years ago. That's not a congestion pricing success. London is the most congested city for the 2nd year running, that's from this year. Emissions in London reduced by 7%. 7%. And if you know anything about their congestion pricing, it's actually based on the emissions of the vehicle. So the cars that are going to London are predominantly EVs and hybrids, and yet still, their emissions reduction only in the central business district is 7%. And unfortunately for Londoners, even with the help of our friend Andy Byford, TfL, Transport for London, is on the verge of bankruptcy and insolvency, meaning that the money they've generated from their congestion pricing has not met the goal. We know it's not working in London because Mayor Khan had to do a public consultation, not just a poll. They had to actually go out to the voters and citizens of London and say, do we want to expand our ultra-low emission zone outside of the central business district and basically include all of Greater London? 66% of people, 2/3 of Londoners, said the plan is absolute garbage and it isn't working and not to do it. And yet here we have Kathy Hope now knowingly implementing this policy, despite the fact her own agency's report says it's going to do nothing for congestion outside of the central business district, and even that will be minimal. It's going to do nothing for emissions. And we've already got the money for the MTA that we were told was the end-all, be-all justification for congestion pricing. The last thing I want you all to do is look behind me over the bridge. Because when you see cars coming over that bridge, tell me how many Rolls Royce you see. Tell me how many Maseratis you see. You don't. You see Mazdas. You see minivans. You see home health aides. You see sanitation workers. You see regular working class New Yorkers who are about to be punished for the privilege of driving from one part of their own city to the other. This is disgusting. It's a disgrace. I'm glad to see so much pushback from our friends and colleagues across the aisle for Republicans in New Jersey. I'm hoping Governor Murphy goes the nuclear option and starts putting some real pressure on Governor Hochul. But let's see what happens. I do want to call up next my co-chair of the Common Sense Caucus, Bob Hochul.
Thank you, Joe. I represent Western Queens in the 30th District. This is a tax, obviously. This is not any congestion pricing is a nice word there, nice words, but it's a tax. And guess what's going to happen after we're taxed? We're also going to have to pay for inflation. The prices are going to go up. Deliveries are going to be more expensive. What are the stores going to do? They're going to pass it off to us, the taxpayer. So the last thing New York City needs right now is another tax. People are fleeing for low tax states and cities because New York City is really getting to a point where you can't make a living in New York City. And let's talk about the EAS, Environmental Assessment Stuff. That is a rubber stamp, essentially. Every EAS gets approved that I know, 99% of them. EIS is an impact study, environmental impact study, that really does an accurate measure of pollution, congestion, and so forth. And by the way, who caused the congestion in New York City? Department of Transportation. Didn't it? Look how difficult it is to drive. Less cars coming in Manhattan, but again, a lot more congestion. And that's why they've eliminated Broadway. Look how many lanes were eliminated. Look how many situations where it makes it tougher to drive around New York City. You can do creative situations or solutions to this by, again, let's try to coordinate deliveries to business. That's the biggest congestion you see. If you create a one-lane thoroughfare, how do you deliver? How do you deliver to stores if you can't get by? And that's what's happening. Look at DOT's miserable record in New York City, what they've done. Vision Zero is a failure. More people are getting killed with their measures. So, again, Joe Borelli covered everything. I just want to get down to the basics. What it's going to do, what congestion pricing and littering is going to do, again, to New York City. It's going to drive more people away, period. Thank you very much. Joe?
And next, we'll hear from David Carr, the council member from the Mid-Island.
Thank you, Joe. I want to thank the minority leader and our caucus co-chair, Bob Holden, for having this press conference and raising awareness again on this issue. They both made it very clear that congestion pricing fails the threefold test. It's not going to help the environment, it's not going to control congestion, and it's no longer needed to raise the revenue that the MTA has claimed it needs, and why they've been pushing this program. But let's be real. The environment and congestion were never the main point. It was always about the money. Councilmember Holden's 100% on the mark. When there's a new levy from government, there's no other word for it but a tax. And when it's in the form of a charge or a fee, it's the most progressive form of taxation. It's going to hurt working class New Yorkers more than it's going to hurt those that have the so-called 1%ers that my colleagues in the council and up in Albany love to vilify. They're not going to be the ones that have a hard time paying this. It's going to be the working class New Yorkers who commute to the city for the jobs they've been doing well and ably for years. For years. And now we're just going to simply make it harder once again for them to come to the city to do work, to conduct business, at a time when we're trying to say that Manhattan is once again open for business after years of being in a pandemic. So we need to have the MTA, we need Albany to force the MTA to reconsider and shelve this ridiculous plan that's not going to do a thing to help the environment, not going to do a thing to control congestion in the city, and is not going to raise the money they think, especially when they already have the money they need with this infusion to continue to operate. We don't need to be asked to pay more to make up for the mistakes in the past. Mistakes to invest in capacity rather than investing in actually doing the necessary maintenance and upgrades to the existing network. Those are mistakes that we're now being asked to pay for yet again. So I really hope the MTA hear us. I hope that Albany hears us and puts this plan back underground where it belongs. Thank you.
Next, I'll go down the line. Councilmember Ari Kagan from Brooklyn.
Thank you. Thank you, Minority Leader Borelli. Thank you, Chair of Common Sense members for holding my colleagues, for holding this press conference. I'm a subway rider. I use public transportation every single day. I'm coming to City Hall by R train, switching from F train. This plan is an absolute disaster. It also creates like one neighborhood that like borough of Manhattan, and again the so-called punishable outer boroughs out of sight. Let's create a huge parking lots around Manhattan where people will live, will park their cars to avoid this new tax. Make no mistake about it. It is all about money, and it will hurt so many small businesses, Uber drivers, car service drivers, small businesses all over the city of New York. It will hurt middle class workers. It will hurt an innumerable amount of people in New York City. So again, all of these outer boroughs will be large parking lots for abandoned cars, temporary abandoned, by the time people will come back. Because people are smarter than that to pay it every single time. And the best way to make people, to force people to subway is to make them cleaner, to make them safer, to make trains to come on time. This is the only way to convince people to use subway more. Not to invent a ridiculous new tax and to force them into subway system. And again, I'm a proud subway rider and I'm totally against this tax. I proudly represent Southern Brooklyn. Overwhelmingly people coming to me and saying this is ridiculous. It will not help anybody. It will hurt everybody actually. And again, think about small business deliveries, you know. Think about people who need to be for any purpose in Manhattan using their cars. Why are we punishing again? Why are we inventing new fee and new tax every single day in the city? I don't get it. It looks like it's done on purpose to squeeze New Yorkers even more. So I stand together with all people of common sense against this absurd new tax. Excellent.
Okay, that guy we can tax with a loud muffler. Next is Councilwoman Joanne Ariola, please.
Hi, my name is Joanne Ariola. I represent the 32nd Council District in Queens. What my colleagues have said, and thank you, Minority Leader Borelli and Co-Chair Holden from the Common Sense Caucus for hosting this press conference. What has been established here and what's been said already is that everything that the state is saying that we need congestion pricing for paying their fair share for the ride, like my colleague Ari Kagan does when he takes the train here. We have to stop the flow into the MTA because it's not hitting the buses and the trains. We're not seeing a better system. We're not seeing better cars for trains. We're not seeing better buses on our streets. It's all going towards the administrative costs, the bloating of projects for bathrooms, for elevators, the bloating of money that they're paying for these things. What they need to do is stop taxing people from the outer boroughs and making it punitive. Congestion pricing is punitive to my district, to our constituents. We go to the doctors here in Manhattan. It's not just about commuting to work, it's about health care. If they put these congestion prices into place, people will have to change their doctors and have to get health care in the borough that they live in, health care that may not be available to them for what they need. So we have to stop the money pit, stop the flow of money from the city, the punitive congestion pricing that's nothing more than a tax on the middle class, and have the MTA step up and use the money that it's being given, $2 billion? $2 billion from the state. $2 billion from the state. Maybe the state should think about sending that to the city to help with the migrant asylum crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we'll have Assemblymember Mike Zanousis from the House.
I want to thank the minority leader for inviting me here today. And you know, we just passed the New York State budget. It was the biggest budget in the history of New York State, already giving funding to the MTA. The MTA has been crying poverty for as far long back as I can remember. And every single year, it's the same story. I want every single person out there who's watching this to know that every single day you go to work so you can fund the MTA. Where is this money going? Where is this money going? We're supposed to be attracting business and money into New York City to help our economy. And every single day, New York City residents are starting to realize that they're better off moving. And it is a recipe for disaster. I call on the governor, I call on my colleagues in the assembly to put an end to this disastrous idea once and for all and keep attracting people to come and invest and to live in New York. Thank you very much.
And finally, we're going to hear from Andrew Fine, President of the East 86 Block Association and the Coalition to Oppose Congestion Pricing.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Andrew Fine. I'm from the Upper East Side. I am a resident of the Upper East Side, Vice President of the East 86th Street Association, and a founding member of the Coalition in Opposition to Congestion Pricing, which can be found at stopcongestionpricing.com. We are vehemently opposed to congestion pricing as an inflationary MTA cash grab that is ableist, ageist, anti-family, and frankly, it's elitist. Let's refer to congestion pricing as it should be. It's congestion pricing. There is a con involved here. They say that this will reduce congestion. But by their own report, regional traffic may rise as much as 0.5%. That's a con. They say that this is for the environment. Yet, pardon me, I'm not a professional here. Yet it just moves the impact from wealthy neighborhoods to those with less. After all, if it was about pollution, wouldn't they have considered an exemption for electric vehicles, hybrids, carpools? Nope, it's a con. They said they wanted public input, yet when hundreds of people waited hours to make a 2-minute comment and 80% of those comments were opposed, they ignored us. That's a con job right there. It's an honor to stand here with the aptly named Common Sense Caucus. It's common sense that when you're asking for $1 billion a year, but you allow at least $500 million a year in fare evasion, hundreds of millions of dollars in toll evasion, and pay over $1 billion per year in overtime, it's time to get your house in order before asking for any more. It's common sense. When we're asking for $1 billion, when you were asking for $1 billion a year, and you get $1 billion a year from the payroll mobility tax, plus future casino revenue, plus $14 billion from the federal government, you no longer need $1 billion per year. You already have it. Common sense tells you that we have an affordability crisis in New York City. According to the New York Times, 50% of New Yorkers can no longer afford to live here. Public school enrollment is down 10% in 3 years. Common sense says let's not make New York City less affordable. Common sense says that lawmakers should represent constituents, not AstroTurf, bike, Uber, and Lyft lobbies. Common sense says that when your representatives fail to represent those that have elected them, it might just be time for new representation. So to the governor and our elected officials, please use your common sense. Run the numbers, hold the MTA accountable, for once at least. And let's end this congestion boondoggle. Thank you.
Maybe before we answer any questions, I just have one question for you, for the media. If you all can name one other instance or survey, go in the City Hall archive across the way here, and find one other policy proposal which the agency's own rosy outlook says it wasn't going to meet the declared goals of the policy, and that policy was still implemented. Find one other instance where that has occurred. You won't, because it doesn't. And here we have one that's going to be a multi-billion-dollar proposal, a multi-billion-dollar tax over the next generational amount of time, really. And we don't have a single report saying that this will actually work to levels that should be part of the goal. So that will open up for questions.
Yeah, sir, Joe. Oh, yeah.
What's your next step? Do you file a lawsuit?
All options are on the table, but our point today is that we don't need an alternate proposal because the alternate proposal for funding already came in. And if we talk about alternate proposals, I wish more New Yorkers, and not just the wealthy elite who live down here, and not a lot, other people who live down here that aren't so wealthy, and now will have to pay more for goods and services. But other neighborhoods should also ask, well, I have congestion too. Why aren't I included in this solution as they propose? So yes, every option on the table, including lawsuits, including filing amicus briefs in conjunction with our friends in New Jersey. We're going to encourage the governor of that state to do the nuclear option we promised his constituents. We certainly would benefit from there. So every option is on the table. But again, the most important thing is the money's been found.
So Joe, I want to know like how you feel about like Transalt and Writers Alliance making this a party thing. They said that you guys are Republicans and it's only Trump people that supported the.
I pay about as much attention to Transalt as I do to a cricket walking across the floor any day.
Yeah.
They're just chirping the same nonsense over and over.
Yeah. So
they're
want to.
Anti-car.
Yeah.
They're all about the politics of punishment, and I'm willing to bet that they will not be happy or not rest until there are no cars in New York. They've excluded themselves from rational conversation because they're in an irrational bunch of people.
So Father, oh yeah.
Can we get your thoughts on the mayor signing the executive order yesterday about housing for asylum seekers?
Yeah, it was it's a logical step. This experiment on sanctuary city policy and sort of defying the former administration was perhaps a cute experiment when it was a few thousand people. But as of today, we have 37,000 people in our care in this city. And the mayor has finally realized that there is a limited and finite amount of money that can go to this solution. And we are hampered by our right to shelter laws and our constitutional requirements to house people. I don't believe that our right to shelter or the Callahan consent decree has ever been intended to include non-citizens. I mean, the goals of these policies were never to make New York the world's refugee camp, and yet because of the failure of the Biden administration on the border, because of the accepted failure, really, of the Biden administration, we have this massive problem. And I think the mayor's doing the only thing he can do at this point, and that's trying to find an off-ramp. Yes.
The governor and the legislature have made obstinate and their willingness to change this political slang. Can you make their obstinate and how do you convince them?
I think we have to convince them by correcting the record on how elite the people who drive to Manhattan are and the downstream impacts of charging every truck per axle or per vehicle charge. This is going to have a problematic result for poor people. It's not going to have a problematic result for those elite people. They're not the ones who are going to get punished. It's only the people at the lower end of the spectrum. I challenge any one of those politicians to get your Tommy Bahama chair, get some iced tea. We'll sit right behind me in this little square here, and we'll look at the cars that come over the Brooklyn Bridge or the Manhattan Bridge. They can pick and see that it is, a home health aide driving at 5 in the morning in a beat-up minivan, right? It's a sanitation worker driving in a small, crappy car. It's the labor movement. It's construction workers. It's all these people that work odd times a day. It's people in the service industry. It's plumbers bringing their equipment every day. It's electricians. It's all these people that Manhattanites suddenly don't think they're ever going to need again. All of the costs are going to be borne on the residents and the people providing those services.
I just want to say a few things. Thank you for your resolution. My name is Mohammed Farah. I'm a New York City TLC driver, a driver advocate in the city. We're against injustice pricing for many reasons. I think people tend to forget that the city already received $1.5 billion since 2019. When a vehicle enters below 95th Street, you hear that.
We already have a congestion
$275.
charge. We forgot to mention that.
Also we talked to Councilmember Fierez, Amanda Fierez, on District 18. In public, in front of that building, we said we want to flood it with the MTA. I spoke to Richard Davey, the president of the MTA. He's mute. He can't say anything. He doesn't say anything. So when I ordered the MTA, I'm a native New Yorker. I'm a TLC driver. Drivers are being hammered. The New York driver is making less than the Seattle driver in Seattle. The New York driver in Seattle is making more than the driver here. That's incredible. It's ridiculous. Drivers are sleeping in their cars. I just left the Bowery mission 7 months ago. It has to stop. It has to stop. We want that order. Thank you. This is the face of congestion.
My question is to you, and maybe you forward the question to the congressperson. I have many questions. You talk about the migrants. I'm immigrant myself, and I'm proud to be immigrant. You think that it should be? I know most migrants are economic migrants. We know that for a fact. But also the asylum seekers. Don't you think the United States should put a limit? Like this year, we only allowed 1,000.
Well, we do have limits and rules and procedures. This administration has just chosen not to follow them, and the city and state has chosen not to enforce the reality.
But I'm talking about the federal government.
Yeah, we have right now admission standards, rules, and limits which are just not being followed.
Okay, and also with this migrant crisis, I'm going to speak like it is. A lot of migrants that have been here for years, who are homeless in the street.
Well, I'll give you a fun fact. We're spending more money. We're spending more money per day on our migrant housing than we are on our HRA homeless housing for people that have been here and been homeless and are citizens. So I'll leave it at that. Anyone question on topic? Well, the MTA can't be abolished for a number of very good reasons. Number one being that we need public transit. Number two being that it transports more people every single day than every other public transit system in the country combined times two. So it's always going to be a model. No one is saying the MTA should be the most behemothly large public transportation system in the country. We're saying that they need to get to the bottom of why it costs so much to do everything, but just things right across the river in New Jersey cost much less. We had a fun thing a couple of months ago about why does a tree cost $3,800 in New York City, $500 in Jersey City. Those are the kind of questions the MTA never wants to confront, never wants to answer. There's some reasons why other cities are able to build underground miles cheaper than us. Some countries have universal health care, so contractors aren't paid. There's 100 good reasons. none of them add up to 8 to 12 times more. Not a single one of those reasons add up to 8 to 12 times more. The MTA also has an unlimited ability to bond. They can just raise tolls. They can basically raise tolls on themselves, right? They can basically unilaterally raise the tolls and then issue new debt based on those bonds. So they have a limitless supply of capital money. So they continuously go back to that well, go back to that piggy bank, they issue new debt without ever paying their debt before, and we should be unsurprised that we're into this conundrum that we're in. I mean, think about it, the MTA issues more debt that we're responsible for than like 40-something states. That's insane.
What do you see in the event that there's some iteration of this? The council mentioned that they're going to start building parking lots like in Washington City and the Bronx to like take care of the cars that are parking there.
I mean, so we saw that in London, where I forget the term, but the outer boroughs in London, just outside of the emission zone, tried to do things like close streets to non-resident traffic because that was the net impact, that there was so much congestion in those boroughs that those local councils were trying to do that. Eventually they had to stop doing that for whatever legal reason in the UK, I don't understand. But they also had a thing, it was called rat racing or rat trapping, where people would then drive through all these boroughs to avoid the fee there. The fee in London is like £11 today. The fee here is going to be double that at its worst. So imagine what's going to happen with all the other congestion. Imagine what's going to happen when you have two crossings from New Jersey that directly feed into the congestion zone, one that doesn't. Where do you think every truck is going to go? Where do you think every single non-congestion zone bit of traffic is going to go? It's going to go to the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side, through the Manhattan Bridge, Washington Heights, etc. These aren't logical. These aren't like rocket science things. And in fact, the reports actually say what I'm saying. And it goes back to my point of what other instance can we point to where the rosy picture report from the agency still doesn't meet the goals, and yet we're still going to do this. You couldn't find one report like that in the building. At least in the past, they had the decency to blow smoke up our asses that the policy was going to work before implementing it and spending a whole bunch of money. Here they're saying, that's not going to work, but go scratch. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.